My name is Clifton Hicks. This is Steve Casey to my left here. We were both privates in C Troop of the 1st Squadron of the 1st U.S. Cavalry Regiment. Steve here is going to help me out on some of these things. Before I begin, though, I just have a brief statement I'd like to say. For the infantrymen, scouts, and tankers of C Troop, 1st Squadron, 1st United States Cavalry Regiment, there are a few words which can express my admiration. I can merely say that I love them with all of my heart, and that I would never have made it home alive without such a worthy and courageous host at my side. These were men who risked everything for a cause which they believed was just and true. They left behind them their families, their friends, and their lives. And in fact, they endured the unendurable. They did this not for greed or jealousy or hatred, but for the sake of love. And for that, they are beyond judgment. And I am no judge, and I have not come here to pass judgment either on my fellow soldiers or the officers who once commanded us in war. I'm simply here today to pass judgment on war itself. First item, April 2004, free fire zone in the Abu Ghraib neighborhood of Baghdad. During Operation Blackjack, my troop was specifically instructed by our troop commander, a captain, that a particular sector we were moving to recon enforce was now considered a free fire zone. I specifically recall him telling us that there were, quote, no friendlies in the area. And then he specifically said, quote, game on, all weapons free. It's important to understand these are not unusual orders. These are not even unnecessary orders. And the nature of war, and this particular war, these are necessary whenever a situation gets unusually dangerous or confused, which happens quite often, as I'm sure you can imagine. Upon arrival in the area, we found the streets, besides being littered with wreckage of, vehicles. Who knows if it's a civilian vehicle or an enemy vehicle? There's no way to tell. But wreckage of vehicles. There wasn't a single building in this neighborhood that hadn't had a hole shot through it or something explode inside of it. This place was totally destroyed. The streets were littered with numerous human and animal corpses, not just men, but all manner of humanity. I personally saw no military gear or weapons of any kind on any of the bodies that I came across. I personally did not fire my weapon on this operation, but I do know that other members of my unit embraced the weapons-free order by firing, for example, by firing indiscriminately into occupied civilian vehicles and at civilians themselves, using both personal weapons such as rifles and crew-served vehicle-mounted weapons such as machine guns, coaxial machine guns of various caliber. And Steve, would you want to elaborate a bit on some of that?
Again, my name's Stephen Casey. I was deployed with Cliff, obviously at this same point. We were not
One
together.
second, Steve.
No, he's good.
Is it good? Well, here, just use mine.
Sounds good.
Start from the top again, please.
I'm Stephen Casey. I was in the same unit as Cliff. In this one particular event he's talking about, the free fire zone, he was in what we could call the rear for a little bit, and I was in a forward platoon doing operations on the streets. And we were all ordered, it was free fire, no friendlies, due to the fact there was a rise in violence as we were trying to leave and go home after our year. We were April of 2004. We were scheduled to go home, but due to a rise in violence, we had to remain, and we returned to the Operation Blackjack. We went to the city where we were supposed to secure and patrol. The first thing that I noticed is that the several buildings had been bulldozed by American engineering companies. And it flattened and piled everything from rubble and vehicles up on the side of the road and set them ablaze. And that's how they cleaned up the area and weeded out the bad guys. And we were sort of a cleanup crew after that. And I witnessed several different occurrences where people took advantage of the free fire order. Specifically, over 20 different vehicles were disabled. I witnessed personal weapons being fired into the radiators and windshields due to the fact that these vehicles were coming up the correct side of the road that we were going down the wrong way. Our orders at this point in time were to have one vehicle on each side of the highway and ensure there was no one on the highway besides us. So with all the hand waving you can really do from a vehicle, and those who didn't turn around, unfortunately, were neutralized one way or another. Either the vehicle, there were shots fired into the windshields, the radiators, well over 20 different times I personally witnessed. And I don't really, I never came to be able to justify that. I personally never fired at these and used the free fire order. But there was a lot of collateral damage, no combatant damage that I can even recall at that point in time by the people I was with. And actually, I don't know, I have some pictures of the actual marketplace after it was bulldozed to the ground. I don't know if we'll be able to get those up or not, but maybe not. However, there is footage, picture evidence of this. I think that's really all I'll say about that.
It was later reported to us by our platoon leader. Steve and I were in separate platoons. He was a scout, I was a tanker. But my platoon leader later reported to me that some whiz kid somewhere had estimated that between 700 to 800 enemy had been killed on that operation. And as you just heard, and I'll agree to that, and I'll agree to swear to that to the day I die, I didn't see one enemy on that operation, but 700 to 800 of them got killed. Judging from what I saw on the ground, I'm willing to swear under oath in all honesty that while many enemy combatants were in fact killed, the majority of those so-called KIAs were in fact civilians attempting to flee the battlefield. And in that example, just because they were on the right side of the road and we happened to be on the wrong side of the road, they had to pay for that. I'd like to also briefly say that it's common knowledge among the men of my squadron that the unit which we relieved in the summer of 2003, which was 3-7 Cavalry of the 3rd Infantry Division, had also been given free fire orders when they first entered Baghdad in the spring of that year. Many of the men in 3-7 told stories of massive civilian casualties and in some cases direct orders to inflict such casualties. They claimed as a matter of fact that they literally, this is what they said almost to a man, that they had killed everything and everyone who dared to show themselves. That means animals, people, anything. And this is what happens when a conventional force, such as the U.S. military, attacks a heavily populated urban area. They put us in a situation, we're not bad people. We were there because we thought it was the right thing to do. We were there because we thought we were going to make things better. We were there because we thought these people wanted us to be there. And then you show up and you realize that there's a whole bunch of people there that want to kill you. And guess what? They look just like the folks who don't want to kill you. So are you going to sort them out and figure it out? The only way to ensure your survival is to make sure that you put them in the dirt before they put you in the dirt, to put it bluntly. And I'm sorry to say that. In November 2003, to speak more on the Spectre gunships, an AC-130 gunship attacked an apartment building, a complex of 5 buildings. There are photographs of that. If somebody could project my photographs, the AC-130 photographs, there's just maps and such. Satellite photographs so you can get an idea. Most of our post was safe from enemy direct fire attack. Direct fire is small arms, rifles, and things like that. Indirect fire would be mortars and rockets, which they could lob over a wall. But direct fire, we had a pretty good perimeter as far as that, except for this one spot. And there was a length of road that was perhaps a quarter mile distant, maybe about a mile away from our barracks. On occasion, people would shoot from this building, and it was it was supposed that there was spotters for mortars that were calling in mortar fire on our post in this building. So there were a handful of active insurgents who were trying to kill Americans out of these apartment buildings. But what is really interesting about the apartment buildings is they were regular apartment buildings occupied by families. And we knew this. Every time you drove by, people would be out on the balconies getting fresh air. There was laundry hanging off of every balcony. There was constantly people all over. And this place was a heavily populated, so they were all in there squatting or something. Nobody really cared, Yeah, sure, they shot at us a few times. They spotted mortars from there. Nobody ever got killed from this stuff. We didn't really care about it. We just were careful around that area. But one day, as was told, this is, the official story that was told to us by our chain of command was that the squadron commander, who was a lieutenant colonel, had rode by there in his personal Humvee, and that they'd made the mistake of shooting at him. And either that night or the next night, they sort of went around and told everybody that at about 10 o'clock that night, they were going to put on a show for us. So this AC-130, which Hart described pretty well, shows up and doesn't just strafe or shoot a few rounds here and there. It comes up and launches a sustained attack on these buildings. It circled numerous times, expended quite a bit of ammunition. Steve, do you have the quotes of what the Lieutenant Colonel said?